Thanksgiving time here at the podcast. Thanksgiving Eve, as a matter of fact. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Tim Anderson Podcast. I'm Tim. That's my buddy Ryan over there on the left side of my computer screen on this fine, festive evening. Rhino, good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Making a turkey stock right now. The house smells amazing.
Oh, my God. We are not making a turkey stock at this house. Therefore, my house does not smell amazing. So I appreciate that.
Lauren's dad brought over the turkey neck and gizzards today, or the innards.
Getting after it. Wow.
Yeah, I had just roasted them in the oven with some salt and olive oil, and then throw them in the pot with about 5 or 6 carrots, 2 or 3 onions, some celery, garlic, and a bunch of herbs that I have bound together in some butcher's twine.
Look at you. You are just you're just really good at this. You're just really good at this whole holiday stuff, like the cooking, the prepping, the mindset.
Yeah,
you've got it all. You've
you
got
live
it
for
all,
it, man. You live for it.
You sure do, and I give it to you, man. It's good stuff. I really I'm jealous. I'm very jealous of the whole operation. Well done, and of course, the lovely and talented wearing an Anoka Speech sweatshirt, which is just my kind of gal right there. Repping the product, repping the brand. We appreciate her. The lovely and talented Lauren Nelson Kane. Lo! Sweet Lo. How are you tonight, this Thanksgiving Eve?
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's been a long week. It's finally over. Kind of.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, Lemon, it is Wednesday. That is true. But, I closed my laptop at noon today and I've checked out. I'm gone. I'm out of here. So I'm feeling okay. Yeah, Thanksgiving's not like my fave holiday. So we'll see how tomorrow goes.
We talked about this during the football pod, Lauren, that I think this is my favorite. I think this is my favorite one. It's like my favorite day. I just think it because it's football, it's food, it's like you can do whatever you want. Like you're not married to anything. I did a hockey game last night, and my tag team partner for the game, Jim Erickson, play-by-play voice of St. Cloud State hockey. I'm like, what are you doing for turkey? He's like, I don't do turkey, man. I'm smoking a brisket. And I'm like, you know what? You can do that. There's no rules here. There's no rules. You can do whatever you want. Nobody said it had to be turkey. Nobody said it had to be. You can make things up. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think the brisket's infinitely more respectable than the turkey, in my opinion. I think that's such a professional play by Mr. Erickson. What an idea.
Makes you want to root for St. Cloud State hockey, doesn't it?
Well, I already do.
Well, there it is.
See, I'm not there for the turkey. I mean, no one's really there for the turkey, if we're being honest. The turkey is one of the many vehicles on my plate for me to be eating gravy.
That's really it. You're absolutely right. It absorbs the gravy,
mm-hmm.
and that's okay. Plays well with the mashed potatoes. What is your favorite? What side do you do at your place that maybe is unique to the Nelson Kane Thanksgiving spectacular?
Oh, unique and best are two different.
Yeah. So what are unique and best? How about that?
So unique, I think, we do this kind of like a creamed corn casserole dish.
Okay, I'm in.
It sounds and looks kind of like it would be gross. It is freaking delicious, and I will always have it on my plate.
I'm in on that.
I don't know what the recipe is.
My mom makes a carrot casserole that I think is really good. I'm not even a carrot guy, but carrots, cheese, onion.
Yeah.
It's goddamn awesome.
I don't know what we're putting on vegetables on Thanksgiving that make me want to eat them out of the can, but it's amazing. Keep doing it. I am clearly not a cook.
Change nothing.
Yeah. And then the stuffing. The stuffing is always good. I feel like it's kind of hard to mess up stuffing.
Yeah.
I am not different people make the stuffing in my family. It's not owned by one person usually. I'm sure Ryan has many opinions about this because his family's Thanksgiving is like Bob's Burgers, like a whole 3-day affair, and then leftovers on Friday. It's a
It's a
whole
lot.
thing.
There's a lot going on there with the food. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
do you eat, Ryan, in waves? Like, so you have, everybody has the main wave, right, during the Lions game. Then you kind of take a little break, you eat some pie, you have like a 2 or 3 hour reprieve, and all of a sudden, like, everybody's got a second wave in them. Like, all of a sudden now it's, maybe I want that turkey in a sandwich, or I want something else there. But there's always a round 2, I feel like, that happens.
So I don't eat a lot of meal on Thanksgiving. All right. I'm maybe an unpopular take here. The meal to me is secondary to the kind of constant grazing that happens.
Yeah. I get that. I get it.
It's, the pie's great, but I want a little bit of pie and I want a little bit of stuffing here. But now maybe I'm feeling the pickle plate. Right. And
yeah, maybe a deviled egg has been made.
I'm not a deviled egg guy.
Whoa. Jesus.
I like eggs, not a deviled egg guy.
Holy Jesus. This is going to be problems tonight.
Well, hey, look, you can do what you want, right? That you make the stuff.
I could hoover a plate of deviled eggs.
I said this on Blue Sky today. Look, the thing is this, right? I think everybody gets over their skis on the deviled egg stuff. All right. They're pretty good, but they're pretty mid. All right. They're pretty mid. Now, I will say I sent this to Lauren that I found a recipe today for cheesecake deviled strawberries.
Okay.
That
keep
I could
talking.
get behind.
Yeah,
that
keep talking. Yeah, I'm there. Okay.
Get some freeze-dried strawberries and crush them up in a little sieve and just like knock that thing around on top of it so you can get that little dusting of strawberry powder.
Yeah, I'm here for you. I'm here for it. I'm here for that. I'll be happy to try it when you make it.
Yeah, that might be sooner rather than later. My mouth's watering thinking about it.
We can just stop this pod right now and get to work on that here if we want to. Anyway, we are talking Thanksgiving because it is Thanksgiving Eve. And so all of us here at Peak Cinema, the podcast, we wanted to do a Thanksgiving film. And, I will say that this is not a market that Hallmark and Hollywood have really cleaned up on. This is, I think, an avenue where either, I don't know, maybe it's too niche or whatever, but you'd like to think there'd be a million more Thanksgiving movies, but I guess everybody feels like, well, I guess you make a Christmas movie if you're going to make a holiday movie. Why make a Thanksgiving film? This film is the canon of Thanksgiving movies. Like, this is it. This is the one. This is it, baby. We're doing Planes, Trains, and Automobiles from 1987. Steve Martin, John Candy. It's a classic. Lauren, we don't have a lot of Thanksgiving films.
No. And honestly, this one was not in my canon, so it'll be very interesting to talk about. This is the very first time I've ever seen it.
Really?
Yeah. We weren't a Planes, Trains family growing up. I don't know why. There's no particular reason. We watched a lot of Addams Family Values around this time of year. Which might inform.
Is that in the canon? Is Addams Family Values in the canon of Thanksgiving films?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Does it take place during Thanksgiving? No. It sure does not.
It sure does not.
But they do have that play about the first Thanksgiving where Wednesday kills all the other kids. And
that is true. That happens.
That's the only reason. That's really the only reason. And also, I feel like because we have no real Thanksgiving movies, we have an interpretation vacuum where we're just picking movies that feel like families getting together and being a little bit bitchy towards each other is a Thanksgiving movie. So, like, Knives Out, I feel like it's kind of like...
Yeah, that's a Thanksgiving film, sure. Yeah, they had dinner together. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not about Thanksgiving. It just gives off Thanksgiving vibes, right? Like, it's a little fall, it's a little cozy, and also it's just a family getting together, arguing about politics and being mad at each other.
So that's the key. They're wearing a sweater. If they wear a sweater, there's dinner involved, and they fight. That's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, they're arguing about the same politics that we'll be arguing about tomorrow. So, I
Oh,
mean,
please keep that to a minimum, Lo. Just that's
oh,
not a
I'm
hill.
not.
Is that a hill you're going to die on tomorrow? Are you prepared to do that?
I am.
If somebody brings it up,
Someone's dying on that hill.
Yeah.
if somebody brings it up, I'm not going to just sit there. That's all I'm going to say.
Fair, very fair, very fair. So this movie becomes the Thanksgiving movie, in my opinion. So it's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles from 1987. Obviously, the top-notch cast at the top with Steve Martin and John Candy. Is this, before we kind of get into the plot of the film and break it down, is this Apex Mountain for John Candy? Is this the top, or is it Uncle Buck?
I think it's Uncle Buck, personally.
Yeah.
I prefer Uncle Buck.
I think Uncle Buck is probably his Apex Mountain, but is this his best performance? I think it might be his best performance.
I haven't. Unfortunately, I haven't seen Uncle Buck in a very long time.
I thought you were going to say you hadn't seen Uncle Buck, and we were going to stop this podcast and do that podcast. All right, everybody, back to your corners.
I really haven't seen a lot of John Candy things like since I was a kid, maybe. So I can't even talk to that, but I can say that I do kind of love his performance in this movie. I think it's obviously very funny, but very understated. And he does what he needs to do at the beginning of the movie, which is make me hate the living shit out of him.
At the same time, you like him. Like, you hate him. He's obnoxious.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're like, I know guys like this.
Oh, boy. He's such a blabbermouth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where you're just watching him and you're like, yeah, I know a million dudes like this guy. Like, this guy is me, probably even too. Like, and if you don't know who that guy is, then it's you. You're that guy. If you can't identify him in 5 minutes, you're him.
We went over this. Lauren and I may have discovered that she is that she's Neil Page and I'm Del Griffith.
Yeah.
And the only reason this works is because we're married.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not just strangers meeting. Like he pulls up in that truck after all of this in the Ashkenagan dairy truck. And Lauren looks at me and says, "Oh my fucking God, he is you."
It's just like, there's something about like, yes, Steve Martin is cynical, and yes, John Candy is a kind of a likable oaf or whatever. Yeah. But it's also just like Steve Martin has the worst luck on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Like, so bad you can't even believe it. And somehow, against all odds, against all logic and magic, John Candy has the best luck ever. He knows somebody in every city. He's got a connection somewhere. And that's, man, it's like, I'm only happy that Ryan is like that because I benefit from that luck. If we were not married, he would piss me off.
I often do, despite the fact we are married.
It's, and the thing is with Candy, it's so interesting because I have watched a lot of his movies lately because I've been on a little bit of a kick. I'm kind of glad we did this pod. Because revisiting him as an older guy, it's a little scary actually because I'm right around the age where he died, which is 43, which is a little frightening. But you go back and you're just like, he just never felt like a young dude to me. He always just felt like a dad. Like he was a dad character at 23 years old or whatever it was. I mean, and his career is really short in the sense that his window of making 40, he has 40 some odd film credits and they all come within 1980 to 1993 or 94 when he passes. I mean, it's really incredible the amount of work and the amount of productions this guy did. And not all of them are good, by the way. Like, not all of his movies are good, but for some reason, they don't have to be with him. Like, you just sort of like him at the end of the day. And there is something about him that even now as I get older, I appreciate. And it's just that I just feel like he is the line in that movie where he's fighting with Steve Martin. He is the real article. Like, he is the real thing. And when you watch him, you're like, that's the real thing in every movie. I believe him all the time. He's never a role that I'm like, nah, don't see it. It's like, nope, every time. Like, that's a real actor. Like, that guy's awesome at what he does. So that's what I felt about this movie too. This movie just it's you're right. It's funny, it's ridiculous, it's silly, and it might be like the most honest film in Steve Martin and John Candy's canon. It might be the most honest piece of film that is out. That's going to be the most enduring thing about Steve Martin. Like, so many of his other movies, and John Candy will always have Uncle Buck in this, I think.
And the Great Outdoors. Don't sleep.
And the Great Outdoors. Great Outdoors is in my 5 as well, because I love that movie as well. But like, I think Steve Martin, everybody will say, well, The Jerk was great. It's like, yeah, but nobody talks about The Jerk anymore. Like, nobody does. Like, Steve Martin is, it's like Father of the Bride, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Murders in the Building now, and Only Murders in the Building. That's
Cheaper by the Dozen.
Cheaper by the Dozen,
no,
too.
I don't think so.
Sure. You probably get a little bit of that, right? But you don't have his early stuff from the 70s, where he was maybe the biggest comedy act in the country, outside of maybe Woody Allen. Like, those two are maybe the 2 biggest guys in the country. Like, Steve Martin's guest hosting The Tonight Show. He's doing Saturday Night Live. He's, 2 Wild and Crazy Guys with Dan Aykroyd. I mean, he's doing everything. The Jerk's one of the biggest movies ever. And yet, I just don't think those things are the things that people are going to remember about him. I think they will remember Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and movies like that.
This is definitely one of those movies that, like, when the time comes and Steve Martin is no longer with us, this is going to be the movie that people glom onto, in a similar way that when Robin Williams passed away, people glommed onto Hook. Like, there's a nostalgia to it, and there's also just so much heart. And even though Steve Martin is primarily the person in the movie playing kind of a cantankerous douchebag,
the straight man the whole way, like,
yeah, but even like a straight man, but also just like a very justifiably annoyed and angry person.
Yep.
And even through all that, there is still a good amount of heart. You kind of understand this arc that he goes on, where he comes to not just tolerate Dell's, presence in his life, but actively like him and want to support him. And you kind of understand that, not just because of John Candy's performance, but because Steve Martin is an inherently likable guy. And so even though he's going on these angry tirades, you kind of understand how he gets from A to B to C. I think this movie is so cozy.
Yeah. It's John Hughes. Like, now the question, now we just asked if this was Candy's apex. We don't think it's Steve Martin's apex, right? Because that's probably Father of the Bride, or probably, it's hard to tell because he's had like 3 arcs.
I think it's Father of the Bride.
You think it's Father of the Bride's probably it, right? That's probably where
it's probably Father of the Bride, only murders.
And only,
I think it's hard to tell with Steve Martin, because now Steve Martin has gotten to a point in his career where, like, his legacy as a person has kind of surpassed anything he's done.
I think you're right.
Like, Steve Martin and Martin Short are like, they are them. It kind of doesn't matter what they do.
I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, I think that makes good sense. Let me ask you then, where is this in the John Hughes canon? Because, it's another, this is the formula, right? Like, this is where I think Hughes makes the move out of Brat Pack. Like, I'm not making Breakfast Clubs and Ferris Bueller's. I'm not making St. Elmo's Fire. I'm not making these movies anymore. We're going to do these. And, clearly he had a great relationship with John Candy, had a great relationship with, some of the guys he ends up working with down the stretch. He works with Candy multiple times, Uncle Buck, this one, and a few, and Only the Lonely, I think. He ends up working with Candy quite a bit. It's like he makes a turn right around here. Is this his best stuff, or where is this rank in the Hughes kind of canon?
I think that one's really hard. That one's really hard for me. I'm looking at his IMDb, because I think it's so subjective. There's
if you love his Brat Pack stuff, you're gonna flock back to that.
There's kind of a 2 different eras of John Hughes, right? There's the Brat Pack stuff, and then there's like the this Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Uncle Buck era. I think Ferris Bueller is a part of this. I think it shares more in common with this than it does like The Breakfast Club. I personally, I think Ferris Bueller.
That might be.
It's
yeah,
so
Ferris
subjective.
Bueller might be. Ferris Bueller might be because it might be Hughes like using the setting as a major piece of the story, like better than any movie he's ever done. Actually actively using Chicago as like a major character in the story and like really playing with the different pieces of that and having fun with it. You're right. It might be that one. I think this one might be his best written, maybe not even his most memorable, but I think this is the one that has the most, I guess, the most heart, the most like this is the stuff that I think some of those movies can get dated. I don't think this one dates. Like, I think you can come back to this one and like it forever. That's what I think. You disagree? Because you can't remake this movie now.
I think that part of the problem isn't the remakeability. The problem is the music. Right? The music.
There's some bad music. Yeah, there's some bad music in this.
The music puts this in such a time capsule that I think that, it becomes such a relic of its era. And I think to its detriment, right? Where
you can throw the music's a piece of it, I agree, but you can throw the music out and tell the story and the movie's awesome.
Sure, but I wonder how much of it is we love this movie because we grew up with this movie versus this movie is truly great and can stand on its own by itself. Right. And I think that again, it's a very good movie. I love this movie, right? Like this is absolutely like one of like a holiday canon movie for me. But at the same time, I think that's a fair question to ask of, is this movie really that good or is it just nostalgic?
You can say that about a lot of movies though. Go ahead, Lauren.
I think as a person who didn't grow up with this movie, I think that this movie is legitimately good, but I think my issue with it is that the directing of it is to John Hughes. So like which is so weird to say because he also wrote this movie. It's not like someone else did.
Yeah, it's kind of his movie.
The writing is great. The acting is great. The premise is fantastic. And there's a lot of comedy and a lot of heart like we've talked about. But yeah, it's kind of like the vibe around it doesn't fit. I think that the writing and the premise of the film are timeless. But I think that the way that the movie is directed, the music, the way it's shot, there are a couple of really, really cheesy scenes that really take you out of it and kind of undercuts what the movie is trying to do. And it feels like it doesn't fit. And those are the moments that really took me out of it. During the big speech where Adele is saying that he's the genuine article. I like me. My wife likes me. That's a great speech. And he's like starting to cry as he's saying it. And it's such a good moment. And as he's saying it, this like synth-pop music starts playing behind him. And it's like, what is this? The fucking Breakfast Club? That's not what that's not what this is. This is like a real moment. A real moment that should have probably no music underneath it. I don't
even think about that. Like I've never even, you're right about the music. Like I don't disagree that the music's not great here in this movie. As a lot of 80s movies, I think a lot of 80s movies fall victim to this because they're trying too hard to try to use the music of the time or whatever that may be. But I think some of my favorite 80s movies fall victim to the 80s synthesizer bit, which and the Casio piano keyboard stuff. I mean, it really does fall victim to that a little bit. But I try to get past, I guess I don't think about the synth piece enough because I just am focused on the actors in this moment. And maybe that's the difference, right? If I nitpicked it and I was really looking for those details, I'd probably spend more time. And Ryan's probably right. That it's because I've seen the movie so many times that I've kind of blocked out a good chunk of the music. Like I just don't
Yeah.
really, I don't even really acknowledge it. It's not even a thing for me in the movie. I just focus on the other stuff, right? I focus on the story itself and the standalone great scenes that make me laugh every single time and all of that stuff. And it has some just indelible images that just don't leave you. They stay with you. Now this is
Yeah.
coming up on 38 years later, 38 years later, 38 years later. Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. It's crazy. What about, I want to just hit Candy. Where is Candy? I'll tell you where Candy is in his stage in his career at this point. I want to walk through, again, it's hit and miss, but this guy, what a run this is for 10 years. Let's go 80 to 90. So he goes Blues Brothers, where he's a bit part in the Blues Brothers. Stripes, where he's Ox, which that's the character that reminds me of Ryan the most, probably. He does a bit part in National Lampoon's Vacation. He does Splash, Brewster's Millions. He's got a bit part in Sesame Street's Follow That Bird, which I remember that. He's like the cop at the end. Summer Rental, which is one of my favorite John Candy movies, vastly underrated. I actually think that's a really good movie. Little Shop of Horrors, Spaceballs, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, then The Great Outdoors, and then Who's Harry Crumb's terrible movie. But then he does Uncle Buck and Home Alone. That's 10 years. There's like 10 bangers in there. And that's a pretty good run for a dude who's not a good looking, like he's a big dude. He's a big fat dude. He looks like a dad. He's got a dad bod. He's not freaking Bruce Willis. And yet, like, he is just so damn castable. They put him in literally everything.
Yeah, I feel like I almost want to compare him to his career to that of Chris Farley, who is also a bigger dude and also like a once in a generation comedy talent. But Chris Farley had I'm a fat guy and that's why I'm funny thing.
He played those jokes.
Yeah. I don't feel that from John Candy a ton.
No.
You know, like his body is not the butt of any real joke. It's never funny that he's like a bigger dude or something. He's more just funny because he's very good about playing like a father figure and also kind of obnoxious.
Yeah, also like super likable.
Yeah, yes.
He's not a jerk.
Yeah, he's never really a jerk in anything. He can be a bit of a lummox, right? And sometimes, fat guy falls down. It's good for a bit, like in Great Outdoors when he's water skiing and Dan Aykroyd's dragging him around the lake. But it's not because he's a tubby doing it. It's because like he's old dad and he's on a ski and he's doing it. And that's why it's funny, right?
Yes.
So it's never called attention to that. And I think you're right, Ryan. I think it's just like he's jolly big.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how everybody views him.
I just find that so interesting because they had careers basically around the same time. And it's not like there weren't, like he's a bigger guy jokes being made. It just doesn't feel like that's a central part of his career.
There's an alternative universe where if Farley just decides, I'm going to play these roles like an actor instead of just, I'm going to do a lot of self-deprecating humor and it's going to be fat guy fall down. And that's what's going to make... There's another career there where I think Chris Farley maybe gets taken more seriously. And I don't know, maybe it's a different outcome. I don't know. Like he's one of those 10 careers where it's like, man, I wish we could run that one back 10 times and let's see how it goes. Candy's another one of those guys though, where if it's like, gosh, he drops 50 pounds, or something like that as he gets older, something like that. And we could run like his 40s and 50s back and see what, how many more movies we could have done. What different vehicles he could have jumped into at that point. Like, I just think we got shortchanged a bit on that. Would love to run that back.
I also think that there's a bit of a difference in the pathing between the two.
Yeah.
That is, I think, something that's worth talking about in that you have this more traditional actor path from John Candy and you have the SNL route for Chris Farley.
Right. Well, I mean, John Candy did Second City. I mean, he did SCTV.
But my point is that, right, like he is a comedic actor, but he's more of an actor than Chris Farley was at the time, right?
Like, he wasn't going to only do sketch comedy. Like, he did sketch comedy for 4 or 5 years with all those guys at SCTV, like Catherine O'Hara and Joe Flaherty, Dave Thomas, Rick Moranis. You know, he worked with all of those guys for how many years? But yeah, you're right. It's clearly like all of those guys decided we're just actors right now doing sketch comedy, but we're really actors. Like, that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
As opposed to just being kind of wacky and goofy.
Yeah. And that could just be like what the emphasis is in those two. I don't know SCTV that much, but that I would assume that that's like the emphasis, that they want you to be a little bit more well-rounded, because I feel like the people who have come out of it definitely are. Versus SNL, you might be super well-rounded, or you might just be sketch comedy funny, and that's all you ever do. I'm not sure that SNL always breeds like what's the word I'm looking for? Like I said, well-rounded people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who become really successful off SNL. But do they ever become great actors? I think that's a good question, right? Because Farrell, I mean, we just talked to Anchorman a couple weeks ago. We like Farrell.
Mm-hmm.
And we think Farrell has some ability, but we never really see it. He just, it's kind of like, well, and that's what we do.
It totally depends. I think for it to be there, it would already have to be there by the time they get to SNL, like Bill Hader or Kristen Wiig.
There's really only like 2 actors out of SNL who became like actors, right? Who flew close to the sun as like big actors. It's like Eddie Murphy, because Eddie Murphy did like box office crazy good movies, right? For a stretch after he got out of SNL, and Billy Crystal, to a certain extent, right? And Julia Louis-Dreyfus did TV to a high level. But but other than that, I know Robert Downey Jr. was on there for a year, but nobody counts that. Like, that was like the worst.
I would not count it.
Has to be shed. That's shed from the SNL canon, right? But so many of these guys, you're right. They kind of are one-trick ponies. They want to get them in comedy vehicles, and that's what they do. And it's like, you can do comedy, but you can do comedy as an actor too. And I think that's what makes Candy so great, is that he does comedy, but there are always moments in the comedy where you're like, there's acting going on now. Like, now there's like real stuff happening. This movie's full of it. Like, a lot of that pathos. Uncle Buck has it. There's like 2 or 3 just great scenes where John Candy's about as empathetic and as likable as an actor in a moment of real vulnerability as any movie that you can go and see. It's great. What else do we want to get into kind of broadly about this movie before we get into favorite scenes? Because you said you saw this for the first time, right, Lauren? So this was your first experience.
It was. And I did like it. And I think that this will definitely become a yearly Thanksgiving watch, in addition to every episode of Friends, which is what I normally do. My big issue with the movie as a whole, like I said, I wish that John Hughes had just written it and maybe not directed it. But also, I want to know more about Dell's character.
Yeah.
I don't think that we know enough. We get just a couple of lines at the end of the movie that very, very briefly explain who he is. And I want more, because I clocked that his wife had passed away pretty early on in the film. And I want to know why he's so connected to Steve Martin.
I'm glad you bring this up, because Steve Martin talks about this recently. I'm glad you brought this up.
I was just going to say, so there's a Steve Martin documentary on Apple TV Plus. And I brought up the quote before the podcast, because I was just thinking about it. He said, Steve Martin says this about an extended scene at the end. He said, quote, "I'm not going to read the speech. It's very long. John Candy as Del Griffith gives the entire explanation of his life, and I was opposite him. I was weeping as he was performing it. It was all cut," he says. "I don't know why it was cut, except for tempo, and maybe you're at the end of a long movie, you don't want to hear a long speech. It was cut down to a line or two. And then he goes on to say, there's a line that I loved. Candy's character says, I sort of attach myself to people from time to time, like with you, especially around the holidays. I can take it in March, July, October, but it gets hard. And then he said, this time I couldn't let go. Why is that not in the movie?
Yeah, it makes you want to go find that whole screenplay, and he has it. Like Steve Martin has the whole screenplay in his house. He showed it, I think, in this documentary. Like, yeah, I got the whole thing. Here's the whole line, and it's like Ryan, we gotta freaking get that for a drama, But it's so. You're right, and don't get me wrong. How it is in the movie, in the final product, is pretty damn powerful because they say a lot with saying nothing at all. Like Steve Martin in that moment does a great job of just kind of holding a face in a moment and kind of letting it kind of build and manifest and wash over him. And it was like he didn't need to know anymore. It was this really, I still think it's a great scene as it is, but you're right. I wouldn't have hated having one more minute of that, just 30 more seconds. I'm a guy who likes a shorter movie, but I'll take 30 more seconds of that.
And the movie's only an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not long. I think they could have done, maybe the whole speech is crazy long or something. I think we could have afforded a couple more sentences, at least the ones that I just read off. Like, you don't have to spoon feed us your life story. I just want a little bit more. And
yeah,
John Candy feels so. In the first time in the whole movie, he feels so powerless. He looks so powerless. And it just feels like he says Marie has been dead for 8 years. And it feels like the scene cuts. And I'm like, there's more there. I can feel that there's more there. And that is why I think that John Hughes was maybe not the right director for a movie that he wrote.
You wonder if he did the make good in Uncle Buck, because he gives, like, he lets that moment with Tia, the niece, like he lets that come to the surface about how he's the charity case of the family, and he's, he's this, that, or the other thing, and he's terrible with relationships, and he asks Tia for the advice in the relationship, and it's like, I don't know if we needed all of that there, but I think you wonder if it was just John Hughes going, we've got to make I'm going to make something of this scene and make this the seminal moment of the film and make this where the story really is. It's not about really him and Shanice, or it's not about him and that. It's really about him and the niece in this moment and having this moment together. That's the movie. And maybe I think he went, there's a possibility, I'm not in John Hughes' head, obviously, but maybe he thought that moment wasn't the movie, but the moment was them carrying the trunk up the street at the end of the film. Like, that's the moment. That's the movie.
Well, and I think that that's misguided. So he wrote this movie based on his own experience of this exact thing happening. He's flying from New York to Chicago, plane unexpectedly lands in Wichita, takes him 5 days to get home. So I think that he's coming from a place of identifying with Neil. But the movie's not, like, as the movie progresses, like, the movie's not about Neil.
Yeah.
So I want more Del, and I feel like we didn't get enough of Del right at the moment of the movie when we desperately need it. And then the big emotional payoff is Neil and his wife reconcile. I don't know.
See, I don't think that's the big payoff. I think the payoff is, he got home, but I think the payoff is before that, when he realizes, like, first of all, when he doubles back, when he gets off the train and goes back to the station, like, I think that's the emotional moment where he's like, because that's it. He's home free. He's rid of this guy. He never has to see him again, but he can't get over it. Right. He pieces it together in his own head.
See, that's what the big emotional moment, I think, should be and is meant to be. But it ends up, because the movie ends the way that it does, he comes home, his wife has this big teary
Yeah.
moment. It's like now it's like about this. I don't really care. I hate to put it this way as the quote unquote resident feminist of the pod. I don't give a shit about her. I don't care about her. I don't even know her name, dude.
Well, see,
like,
I think
he
I get
calls
it
her
though.
Once.
I get it though. I think it's about like, now Thanksgiving holidays are about family, and now he has a place to go. Like there's a family there for Del Griffith. I think that's the story at the end.
I mean that is the story at the end, but it's also like now like this is how the movie ends. It's this big climactic sequence where she stands at the top of the stairs and
Hello,
gazes
Mr. Griffith.
longingly
Hello,
at
Mrs. Page.
yes. It's like I don't care about any of this. This is not why I'm watching this movie.
Lauren and I get to that scene, and the vibe to me is very, at the beginning of Hook, when Moira is standing at the top of the stairs, or Wendy's at the top of the stairs, and she says, "Hello, boy." Like it's very.
It's the same thing.
Not even close to the same thing. Think about this. What if now? Put yourself there though. If you're the wife, Rhino and me are into Wichita, and it takes us 5 days to get home. You get pissed off when he's an hour late from speech practice. What do you mean 5? What are you going to do 5 days?
Yes, pissed, of course. Okay, and there's also a difference between like emotionally what needs to happen in the context of the plot of this movie and reality. First
Also,
of all,
he didn't call her after Wichita.
Yeah. In reality, I am pissed at Neil. Livid that he hasn't called me for 5 days.
How do we know he hasn't called? He might have called.
Well, this is the movie takes absolutely no attempt to get us to care about this relationship, and it's like the climax of the film.
Getting home is the climax of the film. Getting home is the climax, which is always the story. That's always the piece.
Getting home is the climax of the film. But the movie ends with him and his wife hugging in a freeze frame. After this big, long, teary-eyed thing. I don't care.
Gotta disagree. The movie ends with John Candy smiling at the scene that he is looking at. It ends on John Candy. The film ends on him.
It's just so like, I think it's wildly displaced. I just think that big scene.
God, I think the ending's beautiful, man.
First of all, the wife in reality, she's angry. She's not sad, and in the context of the film, I could understand her like running down the stairs and giving him like a massive hug and being like, "Oh my God, I'm so happy you're home."
Yeah, that you didn't die in the middle of this traversing home from Wichita, Kansas.
And then like meeting Del and being like, do you want to come and sit down? Thank you so much for getting my husband home. Because the energy needs to be on Del. This is my problem. All the energy of the movie, once Steve Martin decides to get off the train and go back and make sure that his friend is okay, now we need to shift. The energy needs to be on Del, and it remains on Neil. And that's what I don't like.
Yeah, God, we're going to disagree on this one because I think the ending is beautiful. I have no soul. You know this. I don't cry at nothing. I have no feelings, nothing. That ending gets me damn near every time. The scene of them carrying that trunk down the road. That's the thing. They didn't get a cab. It's like this movie was about planes, trains, and automobiles, and the last image we have are 2 guys walking down the street holding this trunk, and it is beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of cinematography. I watch it, and I'm just like, God, that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so great.
I like that. I like all of that stuff. I'm just saying there's not enough.
So the movie should have just ended with them getting to the door going, well, now what? Well, I guess we go ahead and knock on the door.
I think they spend too much time on the wife is my thing. They spend too much time on the wife and too much time on her reconnecting with Neil. I don't care about their fucking That's not why I'm here. I don't even know this woman's fucking name.
That's Mrs. Page to you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Mrs. Page. Want to do favorite scenes?
Yes.
Let's do favorite scenes. Favorite scenes, Lauren.
Well, and I think this is shocking absolutely nobody, but the car rental scene.
Oh God, yeah. I'm glad we waited for favorite scenes to get to this one. Absolutely.
I absolutely love every single second of that scene. And I think because I identify so much with Neil throughout the entire movie,
100%.
That I'm watching the car rental scene and I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I would ever have the balls to actually say this to anybody. But it is like such a fantasy of just like, I have been trying to get home for 5 days, and the car, and like, this is the last, oh my God, the amount of fucks in that scene, like,
Oh,
not
God, yeah.
nearly enough.
I have to say, one of the struggles I have with this movie is simply just how much Steve Martin looks like my grandpa and my uncle.
Yeah.
And especially in this era, like if you see pictures of my family from this era, he looks exactly like them. Especially my Uncle Jeff. That scene.
Imagine.
Would your Uncle Jeff go on a profanity-laced tirade in front
uncle,
of
not my uncle,
Yeah.
but my grandfather would. My grandpa could, what's the way that they put this in A Christmas Story? He could unleash a tirade that would hang like a tapestry over Lake Michigan. I mean, he just a chain of swear words. Like, yeah, that's absolutely something Grandpa would do.
I just love this because it comes out. You don't really get there's really no F words up to this moment in the film, and there's none after. It's just this 1 minute piece where there's 15 F bombs, and it's just Steve Martin.
And the best part about it, the best part is it is so deserved.
Oh God, yeah,
it is so earned. Like that's one of my biggest complaints in modern movies, modern comedies, is they're just dropping F-bombs without a real reason for dropping F-bombs. Like, yeah, I swear like a sailor, but if I'm dropping an F-bomb in a public spot, I'm pretty pissed.
Yes.
There's a reason behind it. I'm putting some stank on this one. Yeah, that's the whole thing.
And the best part about it is the way the scene ends.
Yeah.
Is she goes, oh no, what? You're fucked.
Yeah, you're fucked. It's like, I want you to go find me a fucking Datsun, a fucking Buick, a fucking Toyota, just 4 fucking wheels and a seat. Is there a better line in the world than that? It's so funny.
Oh man, I want that. It's like that, and then the like Chevy Chase tirade at the end of Christmas Vacation.
Yeah,
those two. Just put that on my tombstone.
They're the leaders in the clubhouse for greatest rants or tirades in the history of. Although, and Chevy Chase in the first Vacation has a great one as well. That is a profanity laced tirade.
No, it's not as good.
Not as good. I have that third. That's the bronze. That is definitely the bronze medal. Maybe just gets off the medal stand, but this is right there with the Christmas Vacation one. It's that good. It's so funny.
It's so good. And like the very quiet, he's not yelling. He is not yelling in the scene. The very quiet rage.
And his face just says it all. You could start by wiping that fucking dumbass smile off your rosy fucking cheeks.
I have to say, we watch these movies bi-weekly here, and it's rare for me to get a laugh like that out of Lauren.
Yeah.
When he started that, the way Lauren covered her mouth and cackled is so rare. Because you could, like, every minute of this movie, she's saying things like, "Oh, this is a horror movie. This isn't a comedy. This is my nightmare." And we get to that scene, and she's just been feeling this the entire way with Neil, and he starts with you can wipe that fucking smile off your fucking rosy cheek. She lost it. I've never heard her laugh so hard at a movie.
My favorite is that he doesn't pop an F-bomb, but he is still just full of piss and vinegar as he walks out of there, walks up to the next guy. He's like, I'm trying to go to Chicago. He's like, well, you should try the airline. You'd get a hot meal. He's like, yeah, if I wanted a joke, I'd follow you in the bathroom and watch you take a leak.
Oh my God.
It's just like he is just throwing 105 in this moment. And he's great.
You can just, the moment has passed. He is snapped. He is so done.
Does not care. Yep. No F's given anymore. Like, there's nothing left. There is just.
Could just spread his rage and contempt so thick over pancakes. Like, just, I love it. It's so good. And you're right. It's so earned. We've gone through all of this with him. He's finally free of Dell and just cannot catch a motherfucking break. That's the best. I wish sometime, I mean, I don't do that because I am a millennial and B, worked in customer service for a long time. But oh man.
This does lead into my favorite, one of my favorite scenes.
Let's hear it.
This leads into Dell finding him after the getting punched by the cab driver for saying I could follow you into the bathroom and watch you take a leak. He gets punched by the cab driver and Dell almost runs him over with a car that Dell has rented, which leads into a setup for two later jokes that I absolutely love. He sticks his wallet in the glove compartment and they have to escape. The car is on fire.
Yes.
And they come to the realization, Dell, you don't have a credit card. How did you rent a car? And Dell begins to explain that somehow his Diners Club credit card had ended up in Dell's wallet because we saw the switch happen at the motel. It's just setup after setup. And he goes in this tirade of realizing you stole my credit card.
Stole it. He stole it.
And the payoff of all payoffs, Dell says, well, when we stopped to gas up, I put it back in your wallet. And they turn and look at the car on fire.
Yeah.
Where all of his credit cards are now rightfully back in his wallet, burning up.
Yep. There's that great moment where they're sitting there and they do that thing with their two heads. He's like, give it back. I can't. Why not? Because I put it back in your wallet. He's so angry. He's like, he's just gonna kill Dell in that moment.
This is a little inside baseball, but how good would that specific motion be in a duo piece?
God, yeah, it'd be awesome. It'd be hilarious. Are you kidding me? Makes me laugh every time.
That whole scene, that's also another favorite scene of mine, is when the car is on fire.
Yes.
Is just like, they're sitting in the trunk outside. They had to pull over because they were driving on the wrong side of the road.
Yep.
They've pulled over, they're sitting on the trunk, and then the car just lights on fire.
They start laughing.
Steve Martin looks behind him, and man, I wish this podcast was video. He looks behind himself and sees that the car's on fire and just has this look on his face like, this might as well happen. And just kind of looks back. It's so understated. It's just, oh my God. That entire scene, I completely burst out laughing.
The look back that she's talking about
is
so Lauren Kane. It may as well have been her on the screen, because the amount of times that, I'll just give you an example. Kieran's been screaming. The day has not gone well. Like yesterday, he didn't nap or 2 days ago, he didn't nap at school. And we both got that notification at the same time. And she looks at me, and I swear to God, she gives me that look of, you know what? I've had 3 meetings and therapy today. My child may not have slept at school. Of course that was going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. See, this is why, like, for me watching this movie, I think I identify with Neil so much that it gets to the car rental scene, and that's when it starts to flip for me that this is a comedy. Because like it's not like there aren't comedic moments before. Obviously there are, but I am so with Neil in his rage that it feels like a horror movie. Dell takes his shoes off
Yeah.
on the plane.
I was gonna
Takes
say
his shoes off on the fucking plane.
That's in my. I was like, that's that one is the. It's just he couldn't be any more of a pain in the ass in the first like 30 minutes of the movie. If his no chance that he could.
See, this is the thing too. Is this is part of where Lauren and I found that I am Dell and she is Neil. Is the
you don't believe in shoes? You don't even wear shoes half the time.
No.
I don't. The car scene is where he's trying to get comfortable and he just can't get comfortable.
Can't do it. Yeah.
And Neil is so annoyed with him just like moving back and forth.
He's like just leave the seat alone, please.
He finally gets comfortable and he goes, wouldn't you know it? I finally get comfortable and I can't reach down to take my shoes off. And Neil goes, it's fine. Leave your shoes on. I can't get comfortable with my shoes on. They go this back and forth that I swear to you, Lauren and I have had about 6 or 7 times on road trips where she is just like, I'm driving barefoot because I've taken my flip-flops off. And she goes, why are your shoes off, man? I'm like, because I'm comfortable. It's a long drive. I just have to have my foot on the brake. She goes, what if something happens? I said, it won't.
It won't.
What if something does? It won't.
It won't.
What if something happens? It won't.
Well, and your sandals ain't going to protect you anyway. That's just the way you think about it.
Yeah, who cares? I'll be barefoot.
You're like a 6-foot tall hobbit. I don't understand.
That is true. He really is a hobbit.
The other side of that is I do not have. Yeah, I am kind of a hobbit.
You are a hobbit. You are seriously. You are in the world of hobbits a giant. You're like Andre the Giant of hobbits.
I'm like Buddy the Elf of hobbits.
That's exactly what you are.
Yeah, that's correct.
Anyway, down to the second breakfast. Anyway, the difference is I don't have foot odor.
Fair.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
I am vociferous about making sure my feet stay clean.
That's the piece on the plane that makes you laugh. That's the piece is that he's just like instantly they're supposed to have dinner, like the food is kind of the hair gets dropped on his brownie, and it's just like that, and the fact that Dell is like, oh, my dogs are barking, and oh my god, it's just like the worst.
I love that he's sitting there like I can't stand a blabbermouth. God, I just. The one knucklehead that just turned the chowder head that just doesn't know when to shut up.
Yeah.
That's I hate to have like one more favorite scene. Tim, you should.
The plane is the plane's in the mix for sure for me. So you've already hit on a couple of mine. Obviously, those are great. But
I wrote in my notes. I said John Candy is the devil for taking his shoes off.
Oh my god!
And then I say this to Ryan. He's like, you have to wait. And then we get to the scene where they're driving opposite, on the wrong side of the road.
Yep.
They realize it, and Steve Martin looks over at him, and the movie just flashes. They're both skeletons, and at one point, John Candy is
the devil,
dressed up as the devil.
Oh my god! We watched that scene
Remarkable.
4 times.
You just rewound it the whole time.
We rewound it and watched that scene 4 times. It was so funny.
Absolutely remarkable. He's
looking over at the guy telling him he's going the wrong way.
Yep, you're gonna kill somebody. How do they know where we're going? Yeah, I know, right?
Oh my god!
And the full realization of Steve Martin looking down and realizing what side of the road they're on.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's this very slow realization, and then 2 oncoming semi trucks. Oh my god!
So
just
funny.
Miraculous. That whole scene is so good.
The way this movie sets up jokes. Like minutes in advance.
Yep.
And you see everything coming, but it's still funny. It's so predictable, but it's almost so like funny.
It's like, oh, did you remember we did this 10 minutes ago? Well, here's the payoff on that. It's coming. Hang with it.
It's like 1,000 Chekhov's guns going off at the end of the 1812 overture.
That's a great reference right there. I love that. Favorite scenes. I got a couple. Obviously, all of those that you mentioned, those are great. There's a whole bunch of these kind of great scenes in the movie. Obviously, all their hotel scenes are great. because they have like really honest dialogue. Obviously, that first one where they have the big tirade, first big blow up, where Steve Martin's like, somebody who wants to listen to your boring stories. Like, here's an idea. If you're going to tell a story, have a point. Makes it so much more interesting for the listeners. I was reading the vomit bag. Doesn't that give you a clue that maybe I'm not interested in the convo? And it's just like, man, yes, I completely agree. But yet, John Candy's unfazed. Like, he just comes right back. And I just like that scene. It's a great moment. And then that they wake up the next morning spooning and you get the kiss on the ear. It's like, where's your hand between two pillows? Those aren't pillows.
Hey, did you see the Bears game last week?
Yeah, hell of a game. Bears are going all the way this year.
What gets me about that scene is the nuzzling.
Yes.
The like kissing of the ear that John Candy does. They're not just like accidentally sleeping next to each other. Oh my God. It is so good.
I do wonder if that was improvised, because that seems like
it does feel like it was improvised, doesn't it?
Yes.
Maybe that's the curse. Is that the curse of the Chicago Bears?
Kiss my ear?
Yeah. Is that the curse of the Chicago Bears right there too? Like, they haven't won a Super Bowl since this movie. Maybe that's it. It's the whole hand between the pillows bit. They're just can't get past it.
Boy, if that's what's wrong with the Bears, I don't know.
They maybe need to start finding some people to spoon it the other way and try to see if they can fix this problem and see if it can go the other direction here. But so that's up there, obviously. That's a great scene. I love the scene when the car is charred and they leave the hotel the next morning and they're trying to push it out of the snow. And it's just that he's like, yeah, we got to rock this thing a little bit. Takes it through the window of the hotel. And you just get Steve Martin's reaction of, oh. And then they're driving in this car. It's a horrible car. They get pulled over by the cops. Michael McKean, great cameo role, goes, so you have no front signals or lights. No, we lost those. And you have no rear brake lights of any kind or whatever. He's like, yeah, those. He's like, you know what, though? The radio still works. And it's really weird. All the things that could go wrong. Radio's clear as a bell. Wouldn't you know it? Such a great scene. And obviously the ending, Train On, is, like I said, it's emotional. It's a tearjerker for me at the end. Pretty close. As I get older, too, I appreciate it more. It's such a great final 20 minutes. Great finish to the film. It's one of my favorites. Least favorite scenes.
Just before Steve Martin gets off the train, my absolute least favorite scene in the whole movie, which is it's a necessary scene. I just think it could have been done differently.
The way he's flashing back?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't mind the flashback, but I get it.
The flashback scene, I think there's just something so, there's something so out of tone cheesy with it. Like, it's not just flashbacks. It starts as like flashes about Thanksgiving.
What he's looking forward to. Yeah. Like what he's going to go see when he gets home.
Yes. And there's like the infamous synth-pop music playing in the background. And then like cutting to Steve Martin just making faces. Just
reacting to things.
Yes. Reaction face. It's so, there's something about it that is so like, I don't know what.
Yeah, I am unbothered by that.
Special I'm watching.
Yeah, I get it. But I'm unbothered. I'm unbothered by it. I don't know why. It's just that one doesn't faze me as much because I get it. It is a necessary vehicle, I think. You're right. There might be other ways to do it. I completely agree with that. But it doesn't bother me. Because, I think you do that in a moment where you've been through so much emotionally that you almost can't, you have no choice but to laugh if you can. And I think that's all he's trying to do is I think like now it's kind of like you've reached the end of this line and now it's like, oh God, that was the worst 5 days of my life. I cannot believe I did all of that. And then you just laugh. Like, I think it's kind of like a natural, like human emotion. I think it happens a lot. Right. So I get it.
Yeah. I just, again, like it needs
less
to happen.
It needs less synth pop.
It needs less synth pop for sure. This whole movie does. I just think, I don't know. There is probably a better way to do it because the scene itself is necessary. He needs to have the realization that Marie is probably gone and he needs to go back and get Dell. But I think that could have been done a little smoother. It just feels so much of this movie feels like it should be timeless, and then it's like those are the moments that take me out of it.
Yeah, I can hear that.
I also wonder if this movie's timelessness goes away for people who are younger than us, where, we still like
Tim. Like, why don't you just Uber? Why don't you just FaceTime her and get, and that's why you can't remake it.
Tim, more so in your life because you're a little bit older than us, but it's, like I still remember some of this, right? I mean, Lauren, you were saying even in college, you were still taking taxis.
Yeah.
Right. Like this era isn't so far away that it's immemorable for a lot of people, but for generations younger than us, this is a totally foreign universe to them.
They would say, well, we'll just hang out at the airport. We'll take the first flight out of town and that's fine. Like, we're just going to hang here for 8 hours and I'm going to get on the plane and go to Chicago, which makes some sense. Right. But
I also think that like things can feel timeless, not because of the technology that's used, just because of like the human emotions that are being expressed. That's why I feel like so much of, this doesn't feel like some kind of old Hollywood film. It feels like if Steve Martin and John Candy were with us today, they could still make this. It's not so much about the actual planes, trains, and automobiles of it. It's just that they feel like real people.
Yeah.
Real people who would exist right now. And you get really sucked out of that when you have a montage with synth-pop. And
you got to get over it because that's the 80s. I mean, you do have to kind of settle on that a little bit.
My problem with that is that there are plenty of 80s movies that I love.
Yeah, but there's like 100 movies that are ruined by synth-pop then, if that's the route you go. There's like 100 movies you can't watch.
It's the vibe, though. It's, Ferris Bueller has plenty of synth pop in it. I'm not bothered by that because that's the vibe of that movie.
There's also no real heart to Ferris Bueller, though, too, in fairness.
But that's like synth pop is it's not just 80s. It's like, it's not just dated. It's more than that. It's like, it evokes a feeling of gray. It's very pingy. It does not evoke the same tone that the rest of this movie evokes. It's why, like, at the beginning of this podcast, when I said Knives Out is a Thanksgiving movie, even though that movie does not take place during Thanksgiving, there is a vibe to it, a warmth to it. And the music and some of the directional choices in this movie don't fit with that same level of warmth.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that music adds and it can subtract. I have no doubt about that. I don't think it's worth more than a half star, like no more than that on a film grade. I don't. It never ruins a film for me. It's just, it's something.
I think it is the biggest thing that's taking me out of it.
Sure. Any other least favorites? Because I got one.
I don't know. That's honestly, that's it.
Here's what I got. The opening bit with Kevin Bacon. It's this thing that he does, like, that's Kevin Bacon, like, because like she's having a baby comes right out at the same time. And it's like it's like this bit that John Hughes is doing because Chet Ripley is in She's Having a Baby for like 5 seconds. Like John Candy's in there too with a cameo. And so it's like this idea of like, these are universes that they're all people in this world. And it's like, I don't need him and Steve Martin racing for a cab in New York. Like, I don't need it. Like I think it was fine without it, but we get this opening 15 seconds or whatever it is. And so I don't know. It was just like an excuse to get Kevin Bacon some screen time. And I didn't need it. Give me a pass on that one. Except now it adds a couple more people to the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon game.
Is that seriously why Kevin Bacon is in it? Because I was like, this is the movie of 5-second cameos of very famous
it's because
people.
Because she's having it was almost like a promotional thing. Because then when She's Having a Baby comes out, it's like setting up right in front of the Great Outdoors. And so Chet Ripley's in there from Great Outdoors. John Candy is the cameo there. And it's almost like, well, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the same world as She's Having a Baby, same world as the Great Outdoors. I don't know if that was a John Hughes bit, like, hey, if you like Kevin Bacon, I got one coming with him in it too.
Ugh, that annoys me so dearly.
Yeah, because it just
So
felt
dearly.
like it didn't feel like it. That's the piece where it's like that doesn't add. The movie doesn't start until he gets to the airport, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I get there's that scene where the dude's looking at the painting or the picture or the poster, whatever it is, and he's got to look at it from 5 different angles, and it's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. But that scene, the Kevin Bacon bit, don't need it. Doesn't work for me. I'll take a pass on that one. But everything else, I'll take. I like pretty much every other scene in the movie. Even when they're in the back of that, the other one too I have to add for favorite scenes, those hillbillies that show up. It's like, I'll give you a ride to town. You know, pleased to meet you. My gal here, she had a baby came out sideways. She didn't scream or nothing. You know, what a trooper! Am I right?
Ain't a train in Wichita unless you're a cattle or some pork. Other trains in Stubbsville.
Stubbsville. People train run through Stubbsville. Oh my God, it's so funny. That's great. Next category. What are we talking? Oh yeah, who wins? No, first we got to do Sebastian Stan, Carrie Fisher, Selena Gomez. Is there a part for them in this movie?
Well, there are no women in this movie except for Mrs. Page.
Carrie Fisher could be Mrs. Page. No problem.
Carrie,
I think that this movie could do without Mrs. Page.
Yeah.
I actually think Sebastian Stan could be the dude we just talked about in Wichita. He could just be like, my wife had a baby come out sideways.
Sebastian Stan has to be one of those little cameos because I don't think he's either one of these characters.
That's
I think
true.
he would just be like one of the weirdos that they encounter.
I also just don't think you could make this movie today. I don't think it makes sense.
You just got me to my next question is like, could you remake this movie today? And if so, who would you cast? We don't think you can because I agree with you. I don't think there's a cast for it. I don't think there are 2 actors that you believe enough, like enough, have that kind of chemistry. This maybe would have been, if you wanted to do it, you had to do it 20 years ago before we really had smartphones. And you could have put Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly in these roles and maybe pulled that off. Like that might have worked.
You'd have to make, it would have to be a movie that takes place in the 80s.
Yep.
In the 80s or the 90s.
It's got to be like a period piece. Yep. You got to move it backwards. Yeah. The only 2 I would have thought of in their primes would have been Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Short of that, there's no like 2 guys today that you're like, oh yeah, I totally believe them in this part.
They made that movie. Did you guys ever see Due Date?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Okay. I have it. It's basically almost an identical premise. Wrong actors though.
Yeah.
Wrong actors.
See, you got to have actors you believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is like a real human being. Like, I don't think you can hang out with Robert Downey Jr. Like, he's too Hollywood elite. Like, he's too untouchable. He's like Cruise. Like, Cruise can't play a regular guy. He can't. It's just not possible. That's like, if they cast him as like, oh, I just have a wife and family and I live in a suburban house. Like, no way. I don't buy that for a minute. No chance. You know, you got to, the problem is like maybe Sudeikis, but even then there's no John Candy character. There's nobody who's like him. I
wonder if Neil isn't Bob Odenkirk.
Yeah, I mean, I could listen to that. I could.
Bob Odenkirk a little too old for that.
Yeah, maybe he's a little too old now. Like, same with Bryan Cranston. Like, you could have maybe bought Bryan Cranston 10 years ago. Yeah, I don't know if you could run him back. There's not that guy in his 40s that's like the sweet spot guy that you like, oh, I would totally watch it if he's in that.
I think a lot of people could be Neil. I think Dell is the one I'm having a hard time placing. Like, I think Bill Hader would make a very good Neil.
That's probably true. I could listen to that.
John Candy is so
You have to like not be, you got to be willing to not cast a fat guy. You got to be like, okay, Jonah Hill's not the guy. So who is it going to be? You know, it's like, well, I guess it's going to be a thin dude that we find annoying.
Andy Samberg.
You know, Andy Samberg. Yeah. It could be like something like that, but it's like problem with him is he, I don't know. Is he likable enough? I don't know.
I think Andy Samberg's pretty likable. I think he's, that's not the vibe I get from Andy Samberg though.
Jelly roll.
Oh, Don't even get me fucking started on that stuff. Jesus
I
Christ.
I don't think you need to cast someone who like looks exactly like John Candy by any
No,
means. I
but you
just
need to
think
cast
that,
a guy who's like a regular dude. Like,
yes, very much.
and even Cedric the Entertainer is not regular dude enough. Like, I just don't know if I buy him enough. He's not annoying enough.
Again, they should probably be like similar ages, right?
Agreed. Yep.
So if you're casting someone who is 40, you need to cast someone who's in their 40s at least, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the part that I'm struggling with. I think a lot of people could be Neil.
Do you want to see this movie as a 10-episode Netflix series or Hulu series?
No, not at all. I think it's 93 minutes. It could be 95, but not 1 second more. I think it is exactly how long it's supposed to be.
I kind of agree with you. Who wins the movie? Who's the winner? Who wins?
John Candy.
John Candy. It's a big win for John Candy. Huge win. It's a big win for Steve Martin too, though. Like, I think it shows him in a different place, like, than some of the stuff he did. Like, you got to think the previous year he was in Little Shop of Horrors. He was like Orange Scrivello. He was playing a lot of these really kind of funky sort of artistic parts. He was doing a lot of different stuff. This part is like leading man stuff. And I think this sets the table for the next phase of his career where he's doing Father of the Bride and Parenthood and LA Story and doing some of this other stuff that I think it's just different, right? It's different for him. And so I think it's a big win for both guys. I like them both.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, an obvious win for John Candy. Steve Martin, though, is my personal favorite part of the movie. I think you're right. I think this is like a perfect transition piece.
Yes.
To the next part of his career, because he's simultaneously playing a jerk, but also somebody who is likable and that you understand why they're being a jerk.
Yep.
So
and you see him as a family man. You buy him like, oh yeah, I buy that guy, like that he works in an office and that he's a family guy and that he wants to his kids, and I buy it.
Yeah, like, do you have Father of the Bride without him transitioning in a role like this?
That's a good point. Because you certainly wouldn't watch him as Orange Scrivello or as watch the Three Amigos and say like, oh yeah, that guy. Yeah, that guy is Father of the Bride. That we could totally do that.
Yeah.
You really do need this film to make that happen. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Big win for it's not a big win for travel. I will say that. Like, it makes you never want to fly again. It makes you never want to rent a car. It makes you never want to ride a train. Huge loss for buses, except for group singing on a bus. Big win for that. Because as a guy who has sat in the front seat of many speech buses, we're going to tournaments and having the kids sing in the background, like that is a thing. Like, it's a big win for that because it makes you like, yep, people do spontaneously burst out into song all the time. Like, that happens all the time. So yeah, big win for that.
I mean, I do think that your experience is skewed by knowing a lot of theater kids.
That's true. Regular human beings don't sing songs on buses, not the Flintstones theme song or anything like that.
You know what? Probably not, but I have sang on many buses. So.
I would pay you $5 American if you can find one speech kid who can sing the entire Flintstones theme song today.
You know what? Bet. Next week at practice, we're doing this.
We're going to do it cold. No one can look it up.
Nobody can look it up. Got to do it cold. That's a bet.
You know what? In the year of Wicked, I would not encourage your children singing.
Oh, God. I can already tell you what our bus rides are going to be like this winter. It's going to be a whole lot of bad Defying Gravity songs.
As a tried and true theater kid, when the original musical came out, I wouldn't encourage it.
Look, we're just holding space for it. All right.
Yeah, it's just
you're just holding space for the lyrics.
All I'm going to say for any of those kids is if you care to find me, look to the Denny's after 9 p.m. You can go sing there, please. Go hit the half price apps and torment that waitress.
I want to tell them that, hey, by the way, it's not one short day. These speech tournaments, they're long fucking days. Yeah. This is a long goddamn day, and I don't have time for you to sing this bullshit song.
This is the world's longest day in not the Emerald City. So why don't you go to your round for good and and leave us be?
Hey, Popular, remember where we are. We are at a speech tournament.
Hey,
no such thing.
Hey, Popular, you've got a round in 5 minutes. I might get there.
Yep.
Instead of chatting up the Lakeville girls.
Let's go make some noise instead of talking to boys. And let's go there and not fix our hair. And let's go there. Be popular. Thank you. Anyway, good stuff there. What do we give this movie? Final rating out of stars. 4 stars. What do we give it?
3.5.
Yeah, I'm there. 3.5 as well for me.
Yeah, I'd say 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5 for sure.
I think any movie that you watch for the first time as an adult and it instantly goes into your Thanksgiving canon, it probably has to be.
Well, anything that makes you actually laugh out loud because it's funny and it's not fan service, but it's actually like a real honest laugh. Like it's just setting up. We're setting up an honest joke and making real comedy here. And it's not at a movie theater and not in front of a live audience, because that's usually now how most comedy gets made. If you can sit in your house and laugh at it, it's good. Period.
Yes. Yeah. I have issues with it, but they're issues that are like so like it's not going to bother me in every viewing afterwards. It's just
Uncle
because
Buck this makes me want to put Uncle Buck on the watch list for next year. We'll see. For 2025, Uncle Buck may find its way back. We might find our way to that one too before it's all
do it. I have absolutely no movies picked out, so please fill up the list.
You know what? And that's something for you, our audience, on our way out. If you would like to hear us talk about a movie, go ahead and let me know. Facebook.com/TimPodcast. You can also email me, timpodcast1@yahoo.com. You can also go to the actual warehousing site of it, which is timpodcast.podbean.com. Leave a comment. You can do it you can find my Facebook. I think I'm on Blue Sky now officially. You can go find me there at Blue Sky. I think it's Tim Anderson Pod. I have rid myself of X. I am not on X anymore. So go ahead and not find me there. But you can find me at Blue Sky, which I just said Blue Sky, and I got a Blue Sky notification. I swear to God, my phone, it's scary.
That was me. I followed you.
Was that you? Oh, thank you for following me. I appreciate that. That was good stuff there. But yes, you can drop us a line. Let us know what movies you want us to talk about here. We're not saying we're always going to listen to you, but we'll definitely take suggestions as we go through with this. So I do appreciate you listening in. And I want to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody here who listens to us at the podcast. We appreciate your support as always. Again, we're winding down. We got one more pod left of 2024 here on Peak Cinema. What is that next pod, Lauren?
It's my pick and I do not have it pulled up. Vamp. I'm vamping.
That's your one job. At the end of the podcast, we always go to you for the next one. You're there to sell the hell out of the next podcast.
Look, I am listening very intently.
Her computer can't handle talking.
Yeah.
I am holding space, so just give me a minute.
Ryan, here we go. Let's sing it. Yeah.
Okay. So our next pod, the last pod of the year, it is our Christmas pod, and it is my selection. And seeing as we already talked about the Muppet Christmas Carol.
We did do that one. And Die Hard. So we did our two favorite Christmas movies.
Similar to Die Hard, we are going to do a Christmas adjacent film, which is our first sequel, Batman Returns.
Oh, Batman Returns. Yeah, we're doing Batman Returns. We did Batman. Mm-hmm. So this is the follow-up to that. And you're right, we have not done a sequel. So this is going to be exciting. Batman Returns in a couple of weeks on Peak Cinema. And then you take a little break for the rest of 2024. We come back on Peak Cinema, ready to go for 2025. I believe it's our 5th year of Peak Cinemas. Is this our 50th episode? I think we talked about this, that this is our 50th Peak Cinema here on the Tim Anderson podcast, which we do want to say thank you for all the folks who've listened to the 50 episodes of Peak Cinema. So thank you for doing that. And I want to thank you too as well. You guys have been great to have on the pod. Thanks for coming on with me and chatting movies with me for an hour and a half every couple of weeks. It's always been fun, and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, well, I have to do it or my head will explode. So this is really just maintenance.
Well, we'll get you on for a pod Paris sometime then when me and Ryan just shoot the breeze for an hour and a half. You might enjoy that just as much.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll leave you off the politics pod though, because I don't want your head to really truly explode.
Yeah, that's probably healthy for everybody.
All right, everybody. I want to say thank you again. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Till next time, for Ryan, for Lauren, this is Tim saying keep your head up, and we'll see you.